All right, welcome back to another episode. We missed a week, but that's because we were posting over on Lucas's podcast. So definitely go check out Content Secrets with Lucas Styles. I'll leave a link in the description so you can go find that. But I'll let Lucas start off this one.
All right, we have some pretty interesting new news in the world of social media. Probably the biggest one that I want to start off with is UMG pulling music from TikTok. And this came as a pretty big surprise to me because it feels like it just kind of happened overnight. I didn't really hear any talks about it until I just heard the news from a newsletter. And this includes big names like Taylor Swift and Drake. Those two people are both signed to UMG. But it also includes a ton of smaller artists who me or you don't know the name of. And they're very, there's micro niches everywhere. And lots of the time, these smaller artists use TikTok to actually get discoverability and reach a new audience because TikTok is, by far the best platform for that. So it's not really going to hurt these big artists like Taylor Swift or Drake as much. It's going to hurt these up and coming names who really depend on a platform like TikTok to get their songs maybe on a new trend. And so basically what happened is TikTok and UMG failed to reach an agreement to extend their licensing contract. UMG says that TikTok doesn't compensate artists or protect them against AI content, which is probably fair. And TikTok says that UMG is putting their greed above the interests of artists. And I think that it goes both ways. I think TikTok needs UMG and UMG needs TikTok because on the one hand, having artists like Drake and Taylor Swift and all of these up and coming people, your users and your user base wants to make videos with these popular songs. And so if you don't have that, your users start to get unhappy. UMG, on the other hand, benefits massively from this because they get songs that are blowing up from these new TikTok trends. So fail for both, and I'm sure they're going to come to an agreement soon.
Yeah, I think in terms of who really lost more, I think in this case is probably TikTok, to be honest. I think UMG at the end of the day, they were probably just looking for more money from TikTok in terms of getting all their music on the platform, and they probably just didn't really get to an agreement there. I think it definitely is the worst for, like you mentioned, those smaller artists who really depend on TikTok to kind of blow up. There's so many songs that are pretty much only relevant because of TikTok. So I think those creators are definitely going to struggle. But again, like the bigger ones, it probably isn't as big of a deal other than, a few songs that kind of go viral because of some sort of trend. But it's mostly for the smaller ones. But I guess we'll see what happens. Like you mentioned, I'm sure they'll come to a deal at some point just because you mentioned both sides need that deal. So I'm sure it'll happen. In similar-ish news, I guess, their deepfakes are said to hurt big tech companies in terms of content moderation. This, again, we're already talking about it in terms of like AI, and deepfakes is very similar. It kind of makes sense. I'm sure you've seen recently, like Twitter ended up banning being able to search up Taylor Swift at all because there was a lot of stuff going around with that. So it's kind of... It was pretty much inevitable, but it seems like right now things are really starting to take off in a big way. And we kind of mentioned this in the previous podcast as well, in that, especially around the political campaigning, it's going to get pretty crazy. It turns out Meta already spends about 4 billion USD per year on content moderation, and it's only going to get even crazier. A lot of these companies have like real people doing a lot of this content moderation, so it's going to be interesting how much really they're going to be willing to spend on this, or like how overworked some of this sector is going to become, and like how they really try to build up this workforce. So I guess we'll see what really happens in the future, but it's safe to say that this is really going to be a big concern for these companies, and they're definitely going to be throwing a lot of money at it in the coming time.
Yep, it's not going to get any easier from here. So I'm sure there'll be companies specifically designed to kind of combat that type of technology, which will be interesting. All right, and our next news is X, or Twitter, testing a dedicated video feed. And this is actually something we talked about in the latest podcast episode on my channel. We did a bunch of social media predictions, and one of our predictions was X really focusing in on this dedicated video platform because I think it's a pretty obvious route to go down in terms of like revenue share and getting creators on the platform, but it's just such a difficult one to go about. So what they're doing right now is they've announced a dedicated video tab coming soon to mobile feeds, but we have to remember this is not a typical company like YouTube. If YouTube says they're going to do something, they're probably going to do it. If X says they're going to do something, there's probably like 50-50 either way. So I wouldn't hold my breath that this is coming like in the next week or so. But overall, as a trend, I do believe that we're going to be seeing more creators and maybe Elon or the company even paying people to dedicated posts on the X platform. And it'll be interesting to see how much money they can make. We all know that Mr. Beast posted his first X video, got incredible viewership. I believe between like 100 and 200 million views, maybe even more by now, and made him $250,000. So not bad, but that's not going to be the same case for every creator. It's a very one-off example. And so, yeah, I'm just interested to see more data on that.
Like you mentioned, it's pretty difficult to tell what's really going to happen. You know, it's a 50-50 or whatever, you know, the probability is on that. Can't really tell. They've been trying so many different things, and it's just a matter of if they even go and dedicate themselves with this, or if this ever actually does well. We'll see what happens. Another piece of news around AI. It seems like literally everything has to do with AI, but here we are again. Microsoft overtook Apple as the most valuable publicly traded company. And what would you know? It's because of generative AI. I mean, they've got a big partnership with OpenAI. I believe they own almost 50. It's around 50%. I don't know if they have actual majority ownership, but it's around half the company. So kind of makes sense that they had such a large investment into that company, that they're doing so well now. And another thing that they also invested in a while back actually was a lot of cloud computing. I mean, Amazon's pretty big with their Amazon Web Services, AWS, which I'm sure a lot of people know about, but Microsoft has actually been working pretty hard in the cloud computing space, and clearly that's also paid off as well. They nearly doubled their value in a single year, which is very impressive, and I think that just has to do with OpenAI. So we'll see what happens, but it's very surprising that they've come across Apple in terms of this, because Apple's been doing really well. But Apple did have a bit of a rough year in terms of kind of slowed down iPhone sales, and then their entire scandal with the Apple Watch oxygen sensor what patent that they stole. So yeah, so a few interesting things were going on there. So I'm sure that didn't really help their stock price either. So. But I mean, good for Microsoft, I guess. This time Windows wins.
Yeah, it's tough to say because Microsoft is definitely like on the train of using that buzzword AI and just really leaning into it, whereas Apple is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and they have been for almost all of their products, right? Like they'll release a very innovative first generation product like the iPhone or the iPad, and now just recently the Vision Pro. And then after that, they're kind of like slow adopters to new technology. And you might say like this is just Apple being Apple, but they do have, they put a lot of focus on perfecting each feature as they add it. And they want each feature to be simple to use. And, you know, so someone like me or Pavan who are tech savvy to use it, or, you know, my grandparents could use it, and they can use iPhones. So I think they're a bit of a different company with a bit of different standards and just overall philosophy. So they have had a very difficult year. They've had a lot of anti-competitiveness lawsuits and just problems with the government. We know that they're USB-C now in Europe, and just in general, like crackdowns on a lot of their unfair regulations with the App Store. They are facing some big problems with taking so much of the profit. And, you know, they're just, I cannot imagine how hard those lawyers are working. I feel terrible for them. But, you know, I think they've taken a bit of a gamble with this Vision Pro and the world of AR and VR. So in the next 5 years, we're going to see if that was a good decision or a bad decision. And if it was a good decision, I'm sure they're going to rise right to the front again. If it wasn't, then they're going to be behind for a little while. So tough to say. And my last piece of news is going to be TikTok testing 30-minute uploads, which is insane. If you had told me 4 years ago that TikTok would be testing 30-minute uploads, unbelievable. And this is just, again, part of a broader movement encouraging longer form content. They have also exclusively stated that they're encouraging users to upload over 1 minute horizontal videos. So not vertical videos, but specifically horizontal. And I don't know why, because they don't have like a built-in turn feature where if you turn your phone, it fills up the whole screen like YouTube does. So you're watching a horizontal video on a third of your screen, which is only 1.5 inches by 2 inches. So is that really the best way to consume content? I would say no. And I'm interested to see if it catches on. I think the creators who are benefiting from this, unfortunately, is people who just clip up stuff from YouTube, right? Because that's where you get horizontal video for free, or even copyrighted stuff from like movies and TV shows. There's like that big meme where it's like part 1, part 234 of Succession, right? And it's like you can literally watch a whole TV series on 2 inches of your phone screen for free. And it's just kind of ridiculous at this point. But I do think that we're going to be seeing TikTok just trying to give more rev share to creators and really encourage people to stay on this platform, because everyone's trying to move on to YouTube. That's where you can make the money. That's where you can get brand deals. And I think TikTok just wants to really be the center of that attention.
I do wonder if TikTok's maybe going to implement this feature where you can actually, full screen it. That would make it a lot more useful. I'm just wondering, but it would just be weird that they would ask people to start uploading horizontal content before they add such a simple feature. It's just really mind-boggling as to why they would do that. And yeah, the whole thing about people uploading like those part 200 whatever, it's just so true. I don't know why they just don't deal with any content moderation on that. There's literally just so much of it all over the place. And I mean, yeah, it's just such a bizarre way to consume content. I do hope that they finally add some sort of horizontal like turning feature. Moving into our life category, I recently started using Miro, which is this thing that's like an infinite whiteboard. I'm sure a lot of people have seen different versions of this, I guess. Is like there's I think Google Board or Whiteboard or something. There's also the Apple one. I think it's like Freeform or something like that, something similar. Tons of these different ones. Miro is very, very popular. It's used by a lot of the bigger tech companies, at least the ones that you've probably heard of. I thought it was actually pretty cool. The free version is like very usable, surprisingly. I totally thought they'd paywall everything considering they're such a big company, but because they work with such big companies already, I think they probably make a ton of money just licensing themselves to such large providers that they're just like, okay, we can just offer this for free for personal use kind of thing. So kind of similar to Notion, I guess. So it actually works quite well. It's very good to work with other people, which is what I'm using currently in the office, is just trying to like the cursor tracking is insanely like real time. Like obviously it's like very, very slightly delayed, but it's almost real time, which is kind of crazy. Like from the other person's cursor, you can see it moving around on the screen, which I thought was pretty impressive. But besides that, it works pretty much like every other whiteboard like that you've seen. You can kind of like build whatever you want, right wherever you want, have like charts and diagrams and things like that. But I think it's pretty interesting. If that's something that interests anyone, I would definitely recommend using Miro. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I've never used Miro. I did use that Freeform, the Apple version, on my MacBook and iPad once in a while. When we were actually planning some stuff, when Pavan worked with me in the summer, that's when it came out, and it was fun to use for a little while. I also just like using regular whiteboards. I feel like it's really nice to like write down ideas and be able to erase them. And some people really prefer, physical space and just actually getting your ideas down on paper. In quotations on paper, even though it's a whiteboard. It does have a little bit of a different feeling, especially for people who do kind of like creative work. I do think that there's a bit of a difference compared to typing and, actually writing. So when I'm making ideas for short films or stuff like that, I don't just like sit at my desk and look at a computer screen. That doesn't work for me. Lots of times I'll go out on a walk or I'll listen to music. Music is probably the biggest one, just because it's nice to draw inspiration from, and different music hits different parts of the brains and triggers different emotions. So lots of Hans Zimmer stuff on my side. I like listening to that to get inspired. Very cinematic and just like feels really grand. And this is at the top of my mind right now because I'm I'm working on a short film with a couple people right now. So it's been really nice actually to switch off of that social media content. Obviously, that's my day job, let's say, let's call it. So I still do that for most of the day, posting to Instagram, making vertical content, scheduling posts, YouTube stuff, all that fun stuff, lots of emails and meetings. But now in the evenings and in the mornings and on weekends, I've really been focusing on like writing scripts and learning different kind of higher skill level activities that actually relate to really filmmaking instead of just social media content. And I've been learning a lot. And I think that it's been nice to like, even though it's in the same category of work, like it's all creating content and videos, just like having that switch where it's like, okay, this is my work and this is just for fun. There's no deadline, there's no timelines. Obviously there's people I have to work with and schedule, but it feels nice just to be able to work on something for yourself. And so if you do, like if you have like a 9 to 5 job, which I'm sure is still with the majority of people, finding something that you can better yourself at and you still enjoy it, doesn't feel like work. I think that's really valuable. Like it's tough to find something like that, I'm not gonna lie, but once you do, it's really rewarding just to work on that stuff by yourself. And I'm sure Pavan has all of his own hobbies when he's not doing schoolwork and meetings, which I know he's busy with right now. But yeah, I don't know. It's been nice. And I've actually been working on the short film, and I want to talk about putting money into perspective, because lots of people are very protective about money. It's not a topic that they want to talk about because maybe they didn't grow up with it. Maybe it's something that they're embarrassed about. But I think when you really start to see money as a tool to improve yourself or to get to somewhere, it changes how you feel about it. It's not something that, it's not a number anymore. Like it can actually get you new knowledge and new equipment that you can use to grow. Like for me, I have a pretty serious problem if someone wants to go and eat and it costs like $10. Like I really hate spending money on that. And then, today when I want to buy some equipment for my short film, I don't have any problem spending a couple $1,000s on light stands and different equipment. So it's just like, for me, I don't know what it is, but it's like a switch is flipped. And when you're spending money for stuff that's going to like further your goals and further your knowledge, I think it's worth every penny. Because realistically, what else are you going to spend your money on?
Yeah, I think we talked about this on a previous podcast. I can't remember when, but we talked kind of about like how differently we look at things that we spend money on in terms of like for us especially, it's like a lot of tech stuff or like a lot of tools that we use in our day to day. We have like no problem spending a lot of people would probably think is a ridiculous amount of money. Like when I bought these podcasting mics, it was like like $600 I think, and like plus another couple hundred for the Focusrite. So it's like I was like, that's fine. Like I have no problem with that, or spending money on my computer or whatever. Like it makes sense for me, like for what I'm doing, right? And for some people, they're like, oh, you could just use something cheaper, and I probably could, but it's like improving what I'm creating, and at the end of the day, that's really all I care about. And I think that's kind of similar to what you're saying is, spending a few $1,000s on a piece of gear, you're like, yeah, sure. But, going on eating out and you're like, doesn't really seem to be helping you out in any way. So yeah, I think it's just different. And in terms of what people put their priorities on, for us, it's very different in that we just enjoy increasing the quality and the production of whatever we're doing, or just, making something more efficient. Even like I know I spend time or money on doing things like that, like I don't know, investing in the Streaks app that I got recently that you recommended, things like that, just like small things that some people might not think are super useful, but I think you and I kind of put value differently.
Oh, I didn't know you got the Streaks app. Talk to me about that. What's because let me just open this up real quick. It's on my home screen as a widget, of course. I have been on my main Streaks for 84 days now. Cold shower, 30-minute exercise, and stretching. What do you got on there?
I only got it recently, so right now I'm at 8 days, I believe, if I remember correctly. So that's been going well. I really do actually like the home screen widget. I think I mentioned to you in that episode that I use like a physical tracker already, but it is actually cool to have it just like front and center on your home screen all the time. And like I know sometimes I'm like putting it off for the rest, like for sometimes for the day, and I like know it's still there because it's not grayed out, or like there's like that badge on my screen the whole time, and I know I can't just get rid of it. So it is actually quite useful, and it's definitely helping me not forget about certain things. So I think overall it was definitely a good purchase, and it's very simple to use. Like it's literally the most dead simple user interface I think I've ever seen. So
Nice. That's awesome. All right, and let's move into our final category, which is influencer moves. And I want to talk about something again, which we predicted. It's crazy, crazy timing with all these announcements. And the new announcement is that Sidemen, a huge YouTuber group from the UK, have gotten their own Netflix documentary coming out on February 14th. And so in our predictions and even in past news, we've talked about how so many different creators are either starting or partnering with these paid streaming services. Some of them are very niche. Like there's a YouTube alternative that's just like really high quality content. I believe it's called Nebula. And then there's obviously the big ones like Netflix, Prime Video, and Dude Perfect has their own streaming service now. Corridor Digital also has their own streaming service. So there's such an interest from creators to make content that they can get like a residual from, like a Patreon or something like that, but like owning it. And I think that's the key thing, is owning their content and owning where they put it. It's not hosted by YouTube. It's not behind a Patreon wall. It doesn't have any other company. It's them, or it's them partnered with someone very closely. So I think that's a really interesting thing that we're going to see more and more of in the future. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was the Yes Theory group, which I believe have 8 million subscribers on YouTube. They do crazy travel videos and, kind of challenges getting to know humanity. They have started in-person hostels. So they're just branded hostels with the Yes Theory brand. And again, another instance of creators moving outside of the space and turning their brand image into physical locations. And that's something I just respect that so much. It's something that in the future I would love to see more and more creators be able to do. And in the future, maybe most of the businesses are like very micro niches of like all of your favorite creators. There's already people with 100,000 subscribers. They all seem to have their own product. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here.
I think this is just a natural progression, to be honest, because as of, I would say, I don't even know how long ago, but for quite some time, I guess, it's been pretty obvious that creators have a real legitimacy to them. I know obviously when YouTube kind of first started out, it was like, oh, like you're just kind of posting videos. And then it started to become monetizable and really, people were making a living off of it. And that just kind of lived on for a bit. But then it really transitioned into like, okay, these people have so much reach. Maybe they can kind of start doing their own thing and they can start selling their own service or their own product, or, rather than just having these brand deals, they can do their own thing. And especially with people being a bit worried about maybe, YouTube or Instagram algorithms kind of screwing over their videos and not getting as much reach or things like that. I think they're starting to realize that they should probably monetize their own audience in their own personal way, rather than kind of just depending on, the same thing working forever. And I think a lot of like creators are really starting to think more about like longevity, and like they probably realize that they're not going to be relevant forever necessarily. I mean, some of them will be, I guess. I don't think the Sidemen would really kind of go away, but there's some people that kind of come and go. And I think if they can start more legitimate, or like, I guess, like regular, quote unquote regular businesses, they probably have a better chance of kind of sustaining revenue.
Yeah, that's a great point. Ludwig was actually just talking about this, how he understands that he's not going to be relevant for like very much longer, maybe 5 more years, and that's kind of it. So starting these businesses and these new ventures and having the opportunities now to say yes to things and to really start expanding yourself outside of just content, I would definitely recommend if all creators do this once they hit a certain level. All right, and let's go on to our favorite segment where I ask Pavan a piece of advice. All right, so this time, very simple. I want to know what your thoughts are on different times of the day for working. So, do you prefer working in the morning or in the evening, or does it just not matter for you?
I think when I'm at home, like when I don't have any school, I'm actually pretty good at working in the morning. But then anytime that school comes around, it's honestly just a struggle to get to class. So the mornings normally aren't really an optimal time for me to work. Most of the time, it would be pretty late in the night. If I'm doing anything that's like personal work, it's always super, super late in the night because it's after I've done all of my homework and all these other, responsibilities that I have. So in terms of like doing personal work, definitely later at night now for sure. Quite some late nights, I would say.
Yeah, because I know that in the summer we were both waking up at the same time around 5 in the morning and just getting exercise in and then starting work right after that. So now that you're in school, has your life schedule kind of flipped? Like, are you waking up now at like 8:30 and going to bed way later? And if you are, how does that feel? Does it feel better right now getting all your work done like in the you know later 2/3 of the day, or did it feel better getting your work done earlier?
Yeah, so I mean, at the moment, I probably go to bed normally around probably about 1. It's pretty late. And then I normally get up at like 7, pretty standard. So about like 6 hours of sleep, which has been pretty okay, I would say. Um but I do think that working in the morning is just like a lot less stressful because you seem like you can kind of get everything done and you're like, okay, everything's done. I'm good. Like life's good. Whereas like now it's, maybe like 11 and I'm like, okay, I still have to do all of these things and it's a lot like more just annoying, I guess. And also then you're like, oh, like I probably should go to bed, but I still need to get all this done. And you don't really have that issue in the morning where it's like you can just kind of push and move things around more so. And I feel like I just don't have that flexibility.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when I'm able to wake up early and get things done like from 7 till 10 a.m., get like 2 or 3 solid hours of work in the morning, it just feels like I'm way more ahead of just like not even everyone else, but just for like myself. Like I just feel like I'm way more ahead in terms of the day. And then yeah, it hits 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. If you work 8 hours, you're pretty much done by that time. And then it leaves you lots of time to, work on all of your other stuff. I know that for me, like I mentioned, I kind of split my day up into like, okay, personal stuff, which is like YouTube content, podcasting content, scripting content, newsletter, and now also my short film. That's all of like my personal creation stuff. And then I have like client work, filming, communicating emails, proposals, meetings. And so it's like two separate kind of parts of my life. And sometimes, like with a short film, I'm really invested in this right now. And so when I wake up in the morning, like all I want to do is just work on this short film and just think of these new ideas and scripting it out, writing the shot lists, getting inspiration. And then all of my other work, I like push to the afternoon and I'm like, oh, I'm so far behind. So I still struggle with like, prioritizing certain work because I think it's just another word for procrastination at the end of the day, doing the work that I I'm comfortable with rather than doing the work that needs to get done. So still working on it.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a similar question. For the first time, I actually wrote something in my in my section for this.
Hold up, let him cook.
I know, it's pretty crazy. But it's very similar to actually kind of what you just said. So like right now, I'm working like a 9 to 5 job, right? I just actually got promoted to a design lead on my design team, so that's pretty cool. So that's been actually quite a bit of work, surprisingly. And then I'm also, taking an extra class and then also working on a bunch of stuff with you as well. So I just had a question in terms of like, a lot of times it just feels like there isn't enough time in the day to like do everything that you want to get done. And I'm just wondering how you kind of go about that.
I think that in certain points of your life, you have to sacrifice certain things. And a lot of people that don't understand our type of mindset and where we want to get to, they would recommend having a very balanced life, which is good for most people. But some people are trying to get to places where, just a fact, other people can't go. And I think that when you really look at it, you have to start sacrificing things that even they seem good, but they're not the greatest ideas, or, they're not the greatest way to spend time. And something that you can compare this to is when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, he implemented a really harsh philosophy about their products. And he said, we're going to have 4 products only, cutting it down from, 20 or 30 products, right? And so it's going to be desktop computers, and, it's going to be 2 categories, and then 2 more categories. So there's 4 products in total. And he put all these people in a room, right? And they had so many good ideas for these products. And he made them go down to 10. And these were 10 of the best ideas that the whole company could come up with. And he said, all right, let's cut down to 3. And they were like, well, then we're cutting out really good ideas. And that's the entire point. And so they were able to cut down to 3. And he says, okay, we're going to focus on 1. And so now they're cutting out literally their 2 of their best ideas they've ever had. Right. And so I think, just in relating that to time, it's like, it's tough because you feel like you might be missing out on these really great things, spending time with whoever, and maybe missing out on a relationship or 2 that wasn't going to last anyways. And you might be missing out on these things. But in the grand scheme of things, if you sacrifice a little bit of sleep here and a little bit of social life, even though I know it's controversial opinion, and I think a lot of people on social media have kind of given this like hustler mentality like a really bad rap, and I agree with the people who say that. Like, it does have a strange like reputation on social media, but there is some merit to it. It just needs to be presented in a different way, because 100%. Do you think that Elon Musk gets to the place where he is by working 8 hours a day? Of course not. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And it's the same for basically every ultra successful person. You cannot look at their lives now and say, okay, I need to do what they're doing now to get to where they got. They did things way differently when they were on the come up. They were working way more than they are now. They were making way more risky decisions. They did not have a balanced life. They did not have relationships with their kids, right? And I'm not saying that this is the extreme you need to take it to, but, I'm sure you already are well aware of this, and you don't really go to many parties, and, you're very frugal with your time. But maybe just a reminder of like, there's like 4 things you need to like really focus on, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got actually a very related quote here from James Clear, who's the writer of Atomic Habits, and he says, "A simple filter for managing your time. You're not focused enough unless you're mourning some of the things you're saying no to." So, very, very related to kind of what you're talking about, is that like you do sometimes have to sacrifice certain things to kind of get what you need to get done. So, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, that's actually really similar. That's kind of funny. I'm looking. You have some other quotes here. I like James Clear is such a good book from Atomic Habits. This one, the obvious way to buy back your time is to pay something to do something for you. Pay the mechanic to change your oil, or a dry cleaner to press your suit. The less obvious way to buy back your time is to say no. Passing on a promotion might buy you more time with your family. Declining the dinner invite might pay for the time you need to exercise. We buy back our time not only with the money we spend, but also with the opportunities we decline. And so I think, yeah, just having like a super clear vision. And this is something that I just had a conversation with a friend about. Saying no is so difficult for people, because a lot of people are, when they're trying to impress someone or they're trying to make friends with someone, they feel really pressured into saying yes and being a people pleaser. And they just can't say no to that dinner. They can't say no to going out. They can't say no to going to a party or drinking. And I think that's a really important skill to develop. And some people have more trouble with it than others.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. Definitely a lot of things to think about there, but I think that's pretty much all we've got for this week. Really good place to wrap up.
Peace.